G'day, Scotty.
Heston!
Mate, we're back. It's 2021.
Welcome back, my friend. I hope you've enjoyed the sunshine.
Likewise, it's been good. I was actually up in Queensland for like 5 weeks, and where were you?
Pretty close to it, northern New South Wales border, just below Byron Bay. So my folks are there at Oluka. So
Gotcha. Fantastic
time to get away, spend time with the family, and cut away all other thoughts.
Yeah, right.
Just for a little bit. I mean, you can try.
Yeah. I'm the same. I have this like new philosophy on like even personal psychology. So bear with me. Like even here in Sydney or in the built-up city, whether it's in your office or in your apartment, the walls are only this close. They're only a few feet away from your head. And so then what I reckon is like even the distance between being inside your own head is only those few feet. Your situational awareness really creeps in, and then being up in Queensland, wide open spaces, driving everywhere, just having that perspective much more open, opening up your peripherals, it really does actually have an impact on your like daily psychology.
Doesn't it? So I can relate, right? So when I'm living in Canberra, so I travel up and down the coast from Canberra, where I'm based, to Central Coast, around Terrigal, from where I grew up, and my family's still there, and then my folks were up north, as I mentioned. And when I'm in Canberra, you mentally isolate yourself to what it is, your cave. I call it my cave.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? This is me. When I come to Sydney, it's a little bit more broad for me because I don't live here gotcha. You. And it's a little bit like I'm seeing you, or I'm seeing other business partners, for example. And then when I'm on the coast, it starts to get wider and wider the more north I go. When I'm at mum and dad's, same. I'm driving because it's drive to everywhere. Yeah. It just seems like I've got lots to do or nothing to do, and either way, it's fine.
I'm with you, and that's what it's like, those sort of layers of resilience, proactive resilience, reactive resilience, either way. I put it back to, even in my old days in the military, doing a patrol. When you're out on patrol, like as in the bush doing a patrol, you're always trying to look to see where you might potentially be getting engaged from, or, looking to where you're going up on that next bit of hill, checking out the terrain in case you do get engaged where you need to go take your cover position. And it's actually always having that, your awareness outside, and that's where sort of that resiliency layer, like the mental thought is all outside, as opposed to focusing on how you're feeling, if you're hurting, what's going on inside your own head. I mean, then there's the team in and amongst you as well. So again, there's these proactive layers of resilience, but more so just your situational awareness is outside of yourself. And then, like I said, I come back here and I sit inside my little Sydney apartment. I was sitting there going, whoa, the whole world's going on outside, but it's so easy just to get trapped
dangerous.
in there.
It can be dangerously depressing.
It is.
Right? When you've been wide open spaces and then you come back to your cave and you realise, especially when you're self-powered, like depending on what you're doing for work now, and for those military guys that have gotten out and they're not doing a lot, right? And you're self-powered, it's up to you to write the narrative, it's up to you to find work, it's up to you to keep yourself busy, and then you've got to, use your energy that's not there, for example. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because some of the things when people always ask me, what do you miss since leaving the military? Being out bush. Yeah. Believe it or not. Like, there's elements, people will be like, and cringe and do whatever. It's like, no.
That's me included.
No, but when we've tried to break down how life is simple when you're on deployment.
That's exactly it.
Life is simple. You have minimal things to concentrate on. You're putting all your focus on those things. Yep. However, there's not many of them, and it feels amazing.
Mate, I was with you. I went and lost myself on my dad's farm even for a few days, ATV, dog, rifle, nothing to shoot, but a few tiles and plates and stuff. But just going out and feeling like small and insignificant. And I remember back to particularly days in Afghan, we get inserted onto some of the biggest bloody mountains, and you're already at, 15,000 feet above sea level. The air's already thin as it is. And just being up there and feeling so small and insignificant, always feeling like a level of control that was on the mission. But, just being there in this ancient land, feeling tiny compared to mountains. I remember 2014, I was over there with the US and we were doing an orders briefing, and the next thing, the whole earth shook like hard. And I literally thought it felt like a tank was coming over to crush the building, but it was an earthquake. It was the biggest earthquake I've ever been in. And all the Americans knew what to do. They quickly ran out of the buildings. I had no idea. I was such a rookie Australian. And next thing, I stood there out in this open field, and I literally felt like the entire tectonic plate underneath me was moving, and I watched this huge boulder and shit crumble from the mountain next to me. And it was just so...
This is Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. It was Afghanistan 2015, sorry. It was so amazing. And honestly, I left that experience thinking, I want to travel around the world just so I can be in a nice open plain field and try and experience as many earthquakes as I can. Feeling the whole world move and feeling completely powerless was actually so amazing.
You think what we're talking about now is, you know, small doses of what guys go through from being on deployment and then coming back to Australia, right? That environment change of wide open spaces, for example, or just feeling insignificant compared to the size over there, and then coming back and everything's tighter once again.
Absolutely.
So the same environment that we've set up over our Christmas and New Year's break, which was going to our folks' place, which is a little bit more wide open spaces and the environment is there for you to wind down and think less.
Yeah.
Coming back to Sydney, especially your apartment in Sydney,
and
everything's high speed again. It feels similar. It feels like a mini dose of like a deployment.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, on deployments, there's those periods where there's, you know, every mission there's hyper control. You know, you've planned everything down to a T. There's always that element that you can't, you know, and appreciating that that's part of tactics and whatever it is, given that there's an active enemy who's another person as well. But there's just also savouring those beautiful moments whereby you just spend so much of your time controlling everything around you, and then just having that time when you don't have control and it's taken out of your hands. And that's actually probably the hardest part for a lot of people, is going from particularly that hyper anxiety environment on deployment whereby, you know, everything, you try and control absolutely everything because it comes down to life or death type stuff. And it comes down to also, you know, you wanting to achieve your pinnacle performance, being tested at the true extent of your skills as a person, as a man, as a team member. And then coming back home and, you know, everyone else is making all these decisions and everyone else is highly influencing your environment, and that rapid feeling of loss of control. It's just big. I remember coming back on multiple deployments. That was the biggest thing. Just being able to like let go. And for me, going back to my mum's place was that happy place where I go back and she knows it. She's like, let me be a mum. You know, let me do your washing. Let me make your food. It was just so beautiful having some of those decisions made for you. Absolutely. And just having to release and let go.
Do you think responsibility is a big thing that props you up as well? So I know for a fact when we're overseas, we have a huge amount of responsibility. And as you go up ranks, you could say that you have more responsibility because you have men underneath you, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Same when you go, we're business owners, we're both business owners, we both run brands. Yep. And then you go away and there's less responsibility because of you've chosen to have I know before we went away, we talked about, let's use this period away to wind down a touch, to do whatever. So I've got two things. Do you think responsibility is a huge weight for guys and girls who have left the ADF, for example, who haven't realised what they're holding up as a responsible topic, you know? I
mean, that's a huge part. When we talk about loss of purpose, for me, it was like a loss of responsibility. You know, when I end up leaving as a major, you know, particularly as a platoon commander was my highlight, but my last job was responsible for the training wing at SFTC, running selection, and, you know, having a team that you were responsible for, and there's great, you know, pride in that. It's almost like, not parental, but I say more so like an uncle, you know, actually have this ability to influence and support them and help the team collectively do that. And, you know, and the buck stops with you, and it really motivated me to be my best. When then transitioning out of that for no responsibility apart from myself, that's when I actually failed, you know, because my accountability was also linked to my responsibility. And I just, throughout the progression of my time in defence, I let my self-discipline go without having that responsibility as my accountability as well.
Well, how well do you think like feelings of depression, right? You might be sad, you might be feeling depressed, are linked to responsibility. So to shed a bit of light where that question's come from, being trying to run my own businesses since leaving the military, you end up building responsibility around you, especially when your team grows and or if your specific product for your business, there's responsibility with keeping that product going for people. You know, even social media, if people are getting something out of it and you just stop, there's a huge sense of responsibility that you've just dropped, right, for people. So how much do you think it's connected to when you're feeling low and depressed that you want to drop responsibility, and vice versa, having responsibility can pick you back up?
The
relationship between the two.
Yeah, particularly for me, having responsibility to others really helps keep me on the straight and narrow, whereas just having responsibility to things like a business or a brand or products is potentially like the worst for me, because one, it's still measurable, but two, it sort of puts me into a place where I could potentially, you know, self-sabotage. You know, I don't know about you, but I've definitely over the last year or so gone through these phases where, you know there's deadlines there, and the old me would have been crushing those deadlines and expending every effort, but the newer me, the slipping down in their mental fitness me, was waiting for those deadlines to only be in the last minute, therefore they'd only take a minute, and wasn't really giving it my full effort. And then you get to that state whereby you're not achieving your best, and it actually just continues to spiral into this depressive state of, why am I not being my best? What's the issues going on with me? And then just perpetuating that at those activities. So I don't know, mate. It's something that
it's a juggle, isn't it? And that's why I know that's a tricky question. Yeah. I know, man. I threw you under the bus there with that, but I know for a reason. I know it's a
huge thing, because I know for myself, even just recently with the whole Voices of Veteran cut through, and next thing you know, hundreds and thousands of emails and messages, like all of a sudden have taken on like huge responsibility to really be able to service our community the best, and it's brought me back up to where I need to be, because I'm accountable to others. But again, when there's those quiet moments,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I think it's just actually appreciating that, that's the way I've been programmed, and to always look for that purpose.
What's insane though is when you are in the best mental health, right? When you're feeling not just good, but confident.
Yeah.
You've been doing good for a while, and now you've been doing good, you feel as though you have the desire to share that good.
Yeah.
Then you start to become a coach, or you start to help, and you start to reach out, and you search for more responsibility. You're actually hunting for more responsibility.
Seek and accept responsibility.
You do.
Yeah,
and then at the same time, that same responsibility in a different light can crush you.
Yeah.
Because when I've seen people, and I've done it myself, when unexpectedly your mental health has been dropping, you've been looking to cut away those responsibilities as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think as a protective mechanism, that's what it felt like, in order to get space and time to re-zero and like get yourself back from a negative to a positive, and then trying to pick up the pieces. Unfortunately, as a business owner and in relationships, that is damaging beyond repair.
Yeah. It's a funny one, eh? I've always had people like trying to look out for me and say, mate, are you overcommitted? That you're doing all this? And it's like, I can safely say that I've never truly pushed myself to the full limits of my full capability. Even in service, even in the last, few months, it's fun to push yourself. You definitely need to become more aware and build people around you that are going to help you maintain yourself. But the people out there are like, be careful, pace yourself. I'm sorry, I'm going to throw it the other way. I'm like, get out there and get amongst it. If you don't push yourself to failure or close enough to it, how are you going to know your true limits? And this is what we do all of our training exercises during the military. And a lot of those come down to physical and mental health, but not so much emotional health side of the house. And it's that emotional health that is really where guys like you and I, outside of service, actually often have to push ourselves to figure out where our limits for that are, because we haven't been tested in our previous service, and we're pretty mammoth on our ability to take physical and mental pain, but where it hits that emotional barrier, that's where we actually fail the most, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm setting this up because I know that you and me are pretty aware. We're two guys that are aware of trying our best to be aware of these things. We're very open to everything, really. So when you went away, what were you focused on?
So, I mean, mate, I was here in Sydney looking forward to finally getting up to spend Christmas with Mum and Brizzy, when all of a sudden the little spike happened. So we did the quick puppy exfil via land, and I exfilled via air, and got up there, and I finally managed to get over to Perth, spend a few days with some of the families of those that have been caught up in this inquiry. Got to engage with the veteran community in Brizzy, Sunny Coast, Gold Coast, even up to Townsville. And I just really wanted to make sure that, not planning in isolation is planning to fail. I want to get out there and really ground truth a lot of what we were getting on the messages, a lot of the conversations, and just really trying to get on the ground and see what the feeling and the culture and the sentiment was like from the guys and girls who are currently serving or have been recently serving, or within that high risk bracket, that under 35 recently discharged from the military system. And it was just fascinating getting out there. And
I saw you nail that, but what about you personally? What were you focused on? Because you've picked up a new role within Voice of a Veteran. It's not that old. You've picked up a wave of energy and all sorts of things. When you went away, I know you were looking forward to it, and I know it's like letting the time to chill a bit, but in our most chilled state, we're most dangerous is in proactive. We're hungry. Yeah. But I want to know what you were focused on.
Well, that was so Christmas, New Year's. Got up there the week before Christmas, and I set myself the task. I mean, Christmas, New Year's period is quiet anyway, and I just completely unplugged. I just literally chilled out at Mum's, had sister and copper there, just ate food, laid in the sun, Mate, I even read like 2 books. I haven't read books in like.
Did you go away
years.
stressed, or did you go? You went away pretty. Where do you reckon you're at out of 100? 100 being awesome, 0 being completely.
Nah, I was definitely tired. Like everything from my body shape is like the first thing to my training, losing focus in my training. But I think the key thing was I knew this was coming up as well. So I was sort of pushing myself to limits prior, knowing that I was going to have this respite. And, I definitely was very happy with myself in committing to that respite. And many thanks to my mother, my house nurse, for helping me out with that as well. But
mate, I had the same thing. I have to shout out and thank my mum and my sister. And when I was away, that's what I had as well. They were doing their usual routine, but adding my clothes into the wash,
how good
cooking dinner, doing everything, and it was amazing. Like, it was absolutely amazing.
Well, it's funny because before I went, I had my last session with my psychologist, and she's like, "Look, what are you going to do over the break?" I said, "I'm getting up to mum's." She's like, "Okay, you need to let your mother be a mother." I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, you need to let her do things for you. Because I'm like, "Yeah, well, my love language is acts of service. I like doing things for others. I don't really like people doing it for me." She's like, "Heston," she was funny. My psych's like this 5'4" South African lady. She's like, "Heston, let your mother do what a mother does." I was like, "Okay, sure." And she was right. Again, letting go of some of that control, particularly how hyper we were and how light on the ground we were when we first launched. Everything was very hands-on, every single detail. So being able to relax and recover and do that. But it definitely took a preliminary, or at least a planning phase for me to get that in my head and set those conditions before being able to just easily jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a different version. I had that same version, but I had another element to mine, which was allowing myself to go to the beach every day, right?
Awesome.
So my sister, my brother-in-law, and my 2 little nieces were up there at the same time as my mum and dad, and myself and Jenna. So we were a full house in there, right? And every day they were going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
And to allow myself to relax and enjoy that moment and actually go to the gym, go to the beach. See, it's normally to the gym.
Really?
Go to the beach and lay down and swim and sunbake and just chill out. When I got back and the boys would sit down, Dad and Gareth would sit down and put their legs out and watch some cricket, because it was cricket season, right? Everything's on. And I was able to put out my laptop, and I was far more productive in that environment, letting myself have a half a day of leisurely activities and another end of the day, half day of computer work, in comparison to being home in my Canberra environment, for example, working all day.
Yeah, I hear you.
And it's just, because I don't know how much you work per day, but like gunning for 5 or 6 hours in a row, you can get a lot done if you're zeroed in, your focus, your energy is on point. So I was bringing home some kick-ass lessons on how to, because in that moment was also being healthy, keeping my mind and my body physically fit, because I was swimming and I was doing certain things, which is also important. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sort of even breaking up your day. I mean, that's what I try and do now with the whole work from home life. I'll just have those periods where I'm crushing work, but then I'll go work out, I'll go take the dog for a walk, just breaking up your day to make it feel a lot more healthy, as opposed to just being locked into trying to be productive, because that doesn't work. How's the knee?
The knee's well. So that was definitely a huge... I couldn't escape that focus either by being away. My knees, I think it's 15 weeks now post-surgery.
Yeah.
And I've got pretty much, I wouldn't say full range, but I can't think of anything that I'm doing at the moment where it actually lets me know that the flexibility isn't there. I've got full range in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm not pulling my leg back to my ass by any chance. I'm not doing a full quad stretch yet, but I'm not far off. Where I'm lacking now is strength, and as we know, that's the long period of rehab. Is now just I'm forcing myself to do everything. I think where most people avoid a little bit of pain but avoid doing things. See, I know better than anyone that doing what you repeatedly do is what makes change, right? So walking up and down stairs, you've had this surgery before, right?
Yep.
Going downstairs, making an effort not to worry about how long it takes me or who's behind me and how long it takes me to get down the stairs, but to use the injured leg or hanging onto the rail and going through that bending motion down the stairs instead of walking down with a straight leg.
Yep.
Over time, walking up and down, up and down, up and down stairs at home and at shops and different things, I'm getting there quick, very quick.
Effective over efficient. I like it.
Yeah.
Taking your time.
So I'm just taking my time, but making sure that I'm using it and telling it that it needs to come back.
And see, mentally, your mindset is always planning the next phase forward. Yeah. So you're always sort of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah,
absolutely. I set up knowing that I could get on a bike.
Yeah.
So I've fully decked out mountain and road bike, and just that was that vision ahead going, well, this is going to be me for a while. I'm not going to be running for a long time. Impact, plyometrics, it's all out. It's just going to be strength work and pretty much becoming a king of the road. So that's where I'm
nice, isn't it? Good drills, good drills. So did you get caught up in any of this COVID craziness over the break?
I was watching and monitoring and having a plan of action ready. That's what I was doing. So we went up north. I spoke to you immediately. You shot up north to make sure that you could get there. You were crossing borders. I wasn't. I was staying within New South Wales. However,
ACT, mate. ACT. Border.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm trying to say.
I do.
So Wollongong, Sydney and Central Coast were the hot spots at that time. So I just went around that all the way up to northern New South Wales, stayed there, and then was up there, happy to be there for 3 to 4 weeks, just watching to see what was happening. And we ended up spending a solid 3 weeks, which was fantastic for the mind.
I'm so mad about it. I mean, so when we saw that Christmas, New Year's spike and borders closed craziness, I mean, mate, the simple fact that we are still landing international flights into Sydney and hotel quarantining them in the city, like our most dense population city, you know, as you and I know, mate, you know, there's whenever you plan and however well you plan, you can never remove human error. So what you try and do is mitigate it. And the simple fact of, I don't know, even like a tactic of, hey, we're coming up to the busiest Christmas and New Year period where like any impact to borders will probably have the most devastating impact on the mental and emotional health of people, particularly given how much we've been unable to do this for the year. You know, millions of people were impacted by that border lockdown because, again, we continue to hotel quarantine people in Sydney. You've heard my crazy tactics. You know, the first flights that came in from Wuhan, mate, we put them on Christmas Island. This bloody, all these cruise ships that are sitting around the world doing nothing. Let's go hire one and let's go hire 2 of them and go have them floating off Christmas Island and have people like isolating on those. Single point of entry, single point of isolation. Even up in Darwin, mate, we've got the 3,500 man camp up there. We've got the army barracks up there. Single point of entry, single point of isolation. You know, we got defence. Even my time up in Brisbane, I engage with all these army guys that have spent the last year manning borders, manning hotel quarantine across the country, and they're done, mate. Yeah. Our frontline infantry guys, you know, are done. You know, so many of the regular teams are done. You know, they're now going and doing what we do best and finally getting our medical stuff processed through and looking at their own discharges. But we have literally overstretched our country in the most inefficient way to combat this virus in the most patch meal physical way, as opposed to controlling a federal border and having one single point of entry.
Should definitely clear that up too, because I know that the guys have nothing against doing service. They love serving their country. It's the organisation, it's the methods in which it's conducted, right?
Mate, that's it. Sorry, they have really loved them. You know, they've gone from everything from supporting bushfires to supporting COVID,
killing it,
to being pulled in every ways. Now we're back to bushfires, and there just becomes that point in time, particularly, mate, when most of them are smart, if not smarter than you and I, sitting there going, why are we still doing this? Yeah. How many times do we have to reinforce failure?
Yeah.
You know, but this is no longer a conversation on physical and biosecurity. We're starting to talk financial. You know, at the same time, we're talking about having bloody cricket matches down in Sydney.
You spoke to a lot of them, and there is a big number looking to get out. Is that right?
Mate, there's too many. There's far too many. I was saying to you, I'm going to pop back up to Queensland later, but I'll keep that under wraps for the time being. But there's so many at the moment and that goes back to that general sentiment across the Defence Force at the moment, where there's just this really loss of purpose is starting to creep in during service. And I don't say that in general. You know, there was definitely a large component of the people that I met with, which is still a tiny component of those who are currently serving, but just as far as a ratio of statistics, it was so incredible to meet with these people who were pretty enraged with what was going on at the moment, you know, where they saw failures in our senior leadership. You know, I don't want to keep harping on about the Burton report and all that, but literally them talking to me at the ground level of how disappointed they were watching, you know, our senior general stand up and basically just accept that crimes had been committed without any actual investigation conducted or charges laid, through to just the way in which there'd been that clamp down on everything from social media and just the general vibe and culture flowing through defence at the moment. And then also sitting there and watching so many of these decisions that are being made that we're seeing their deployment and inefficient use and even impacting on their families throughout the country. You know, I sat with one young guy up in Townsville, and, you know, he was just a great young bush soldier. I think he's about 24 years old. You can see he was like even just nervous trying to talk, but just seeing the emotion, you know, when you just see the emotion in someone's eyes when they're talking to you, you know, he was like, mate, we just want to speak up. You know, we've had enough of what's going on. We really want to find a way to be able to speak up, but we can't do it without compromising what we're doing in our job, in our work. And
hierarchy.
It was fascinating for me really reconnecting with a lot of those particularly current serving people who were still alive and well within that culture that was, again, that place where you and I connect with as being at our greatest levels of personal and professional performance, and starting to see during those pinnacle times in their career all these little cracks starting to show from where the outside culture was now crossing in to that on the inside. You know, we were never deployed back home, you know, apart from doing domestic counterterrorism stuff, you know, but even then you're still very like isolated, on focus, still very apex type stuff. These guys have for the first time really been fully integrated into regular society, and they're really now rubbing up against so many things that we never had to.
That's a valid point, man, to get some clarity onto those who don't know, like rotation within a special forces unit.
Yeah,
you're always busy. You're always keeping up those extra qualifications that you have.
Yep.
You have specific rotation roles, like whether you're doing domestic counterterrorism, whether you're getting ready for a deployment, you're on deployment, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can keep yourself mentally busy, active, hungry.
Well, you're in a bubble.
Green. You're in a bubble. Yeah.
Yep. You're definitely
versus the wider army, for example, who are being used and doing an amazing job of supporting the country and everything that's going down, as you mentioned. So
they're no longer they're not the force of last resort, they're the force of first resort. You know, even guys going up to Fiji lately just to help out with the natural disaster up there. It's incredible seeing, again, the value our Defence Force is showing to our own people at home, but at the same time there's its own unique issues that go with that, and there's its own unique requirements that a lot of these guys and girls I'm talking to are really starting to feel the friction and the wear and tear of those after nearly over a year of doing that.
Solution?
Mate, it's just, well, look, this is where we go to this much larger picture at the moment, you know. To summarise sort of campaigning from here, I got to spend a fair bit of time with some politicians around the country, travel up to Townsville with Lambie, Senator Jackie Lambie, and really have a sit and look at all the stuff she's trying to deal with, and Royal Commission, DVA, you know, all these things that are sort of at that top level that are probably going to come down to being election topics. But for me, mate, it's cultural change is needed. Cultural change is needed at the top and at the bottom. You know, culture comes from the top and from the bottom up. And cultural change at the top, again, you know, until we see our Chief of Defence Force apologise for coming out so boldly and saying that he was going to strip honours and awards without charges, and the way he conducted himself as our senior leader in front of the Australian people, this is the biggest thing. He'd have more respect right now if he literally said, hey, I was wrong. You know, I acted off information that I thought was, you know, much more resolute in my ability to do what I did. Since, you know, we're all fucking human. You'd have more respect. Said, hey, I've since done wrong and I apologise for the way in which I came out so hard. Instead, all we see is political games, and, you know, now there's a backstep, now government stood in. It's all saving face as opposed to, hey, I was wrong. And until we see accountability at the top, you know, people aren't going to have that senior leadership to look up to and resonate with that leadership by example. So that's in the hands of the government. In our hands, mate, is cultural change from the bottom up. And cultural change from the bottom up is every single person, be those veterans, be those Australians, seeing what they can do within their own bubble, within their own access, within their own abilities to do what needs to be done, and help starting to focus on what problems they can solve at their level and how they can go about supporting, influencing those around them to start doing what needs to be done. You know, and that's as very simple as like us, you know, speaking out, and so many guys, you know, I was walking around bloody Chermside at Brizzy and having guys coming up with their young families and stopping me saying, hey, just thank you so much for speaking out. We would really like to be speaking out on this stuff, but we can't. We're currently serving and all that. And just seeing and feeling the hope that that gave them and the relevance that gave them, feeling that people had their backs. You know, we can all do that. It doesn't have to be on social media. It doesn't have to be on media. It just has to be connecting with each other.
I think well done on going and setting something up for those to come and meet, greet, and chat.
Yeah,
I think that was really good. So the more of that, that's obviously a sustain.
Mate,
moving forward is let's get more groups, more chats, more voices being heard. through different, passed up the chain of command.
Got to engage with so many veteran groups. Up in Townsville, mate, engage with the Vietnam Veteran Motorcycle Group, who are now changing themselves to just the Veteran Motorcycle Group. And that was such a fascinating ESO ex-service organisation to connect with, because they get together every Friday afternoon at their clubhouse and have some beers and have some chats. And it's current and former serving guys, and it's simple fact that even the Vietnam veterans are turning over, just being veterans and more inclusive, was fantastic. But just seeing that their focus was actually on their people and their culture. I asked them, how do you fundraise in order to, pay for your clubhouse, stuff like that. It's like, well, we get the rent check in for the clubhouse and we divide it amongst each of our members and we each pay our own way. I was like, wow. It's like, well, how do you fundraise for yourselves? It's like, no, we'll go on rides and fundraise for the local kids' cause or the local this. They're really true and aligned that their purpose is each other, and then they recognise that value in giving back. And there's another couple of groups that I engage with whose pure focus was not revenue raising. Their pure focus was on veterans, and watching that the simple mechanism of getting guys and girls together to set the conditions whereby it might not be on the first occasion, and it's just social interactions where they might have a drink, have some food, but you start to build that trust whereby then all of a sudden we start having those same conversations that we had back in the lines, in the cages, in PT, at the gym. You start having those bitching and whinging sessions, but you start either talking and helping yourself to better understand your own problems, or speaking with people who can actually help you solve your own problems.
Yeah, it sounds like self-help. We had a conversation before about, the victim mentality, and too many people on all levels having that victim mentality, waiting for someone to do something for them rather than doing the self-help thing. And we're talking about groups as well. I think, veterans speaking, and not even veterans, military guys being able to speak out to you and say, hey, we need a voice, but maybe it's some of that self-help within their own units, being able to chat and go, okay, we need to sort this out.
This is this mental fitness, again, a big part. I've been traveling around giving this presentation on my own personal journey from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and being able to backtrack and look back through the mechanisms that got me to both places, and mitigations and factors I need to put in place or can pass on to others to help. And a big part of that was talking about, this, I just call it like mental fitness. The culture in defence, I never felt stress, never felt any form of mental health issues. That's because we were always conversing with people who, one, had a common understanding of who we are and what we did, and understood and connected with the topics we were talking about. And you're always in like a free and safe place to do it. Going to the psych was simply a post-operation screening type thing. Never really had that impact. Whereas these days when we're out, particularly when we go through that mechanism of, one, transitioning into the regular culture in society, and as a part of that, isolating ourselves from our previous work, because the biggest thing is that, as you know, in the military system, the big wheels keep on turning. And I don't even know half of the equipment and half of the everything else that's going on at the moment inside the unit. And, when you start to feel more and more relevant, you detach more and more from that. And as you become more and more isolated, you're not having these regular conversations with people who understand the context of the content you're saying. And then we save it up for mental health sessions with our psychologists and psychiatrists, and they don't know the full context as well. They're trying to learn it, 1 hour a week type stuff. And we're just saving all this up. And then all of a sudden, when you get to meet with some of these veteran groups, and they finally have the chance to fully unload everything that they've been holding on to them, you spend 45 minutes there hearing their story and feeling for it, but then you're like, mate, how can I help you?
Yeah, well, me sitting in this seat, I didn't go with you. I wasn't there for the chats, and I can tell you, I don't feel as though I know what you know. Even though you're communicating to me and you've opened that channel up, you were there talking to them. So I think even that is something that needs to be thought of and possibly addressed, is like you speaking out and having a voice and getting the people who need to hear it, they're hearing it, but then they don't understand it completely because they weren't there.
Yeah.
It's also getting more of those other elements to these groups as well, to hear it firsthand that you've initiated, though. You've brought the group together, you bring the person in, not just yourself, because I don't fully get the whole picture that you got speaking and seeing that emotion in his eyes. I didn't get any of that.
I think first and foremost, though, and this is the big message I'm going to be pushing back to the veteran community, is that we need to put so much back on ourselves. And a big part of the presentation I give is actually a backtracking through whereby during my transition process, dealing with DVA and everything else in between, led me to a place where I felt so devalued personally, because, everything from a box ticking exercise through to not needing a psych screening through to taking 18 months to get my knee recognised, it led you to this place whereby you had to in order to get things accelerated, really start to turn up the dial on how much you needed help, how much you were hurting, and it actually starts playing in your own head for the first time, admitting to these.
Admitting is huge.
Admitting to the weaknesses, and actually sort of gets inside your own head, and then even backtracking through the point whereby somewhere along that line, because I literally deviated the first time in solving these problems, where I never actually figured out how to solve the problem myself. I literally had to wait for someone else to solve it. And all throughout my career, I pride myself on being able to be maneuverous and solve any problem, anywhere, anytime, and have the team and the people to support me in doing that. If I didn't know it, there was someone in my team who knew how to. But for the first time, when I got to that place where I literally had to capitulate that, right, I'm going to have to wait 10, 12 months for this claim to get through, again, it just started to perpetuate this behavior and really open up this crack that was appearing, whereby I just started to continuously offload my problem solving to others and just start blaming and just start becoming disgruntled by it. And it led me to a place where I just sat on receive, being reactive, as opposed to getting out there with my hunter-killer stance and being proactive, looking for solutions, looking for targets. And the more and more I meet with veteran groups and individuals, and they all have these stories, and we all have stories, the key questions I'm now saying to them is like, hey, like, your story is so unique, your story is experience that we cannot change, but your story does not define you. It's like, what does that story now provide you with? What is your responsibility now? What are your skills now? And half of it is, mate, if you get out there and converse with another veteran, they're probably going through something similar to you, and they're going to be able to simply get little bits and pieces from you sharing your story with them that's going to help them here and now get resolution at the lowest level. And what keeps happening is we keep saving it up and thinking that the only people who can change this are the politicians or the secretaries of departments that we meet with, and they are so overwhelmed with 100,000 of these stories. And I watch people like Jackie Lambie working, through the night, and it literally tears at them emotionally. But it's sort of also then like, hey, ma'am, you don't need to deal with this, because this can be dealt with at our level, and I'll work with the veterans on that. But stuff we need at your level, we need to task, prioritize, and allocate our work, because there's so much that needs to be done.
You talk about those stories, and there's a few good guys out in the market, I should say now, like Goggins, for example.
Yeah.
Who it's about using those stories to your advantage, not as a handbrake, right? So those people and those guys, in which we know all have these stories, they seem to have no punch until you do something great, and that something great is a personal great, but it's a choice for them to go out and do something, right? Because it wasn't that, for example, I'm going to use it because most people know what I'm talking about. It wasn't about that Goggins finished, 3 Navy SEAL selections or he's run all these miles. They are great things. It was the fact that his story pre those, that's what makes it great. Like, he came from a household that was rough. He had all these issues within life coming up to these moments, and then did something great. And I've talked to so many guys about it to give them motivation and inspiration to do the same thing, because they've all got wow stories. Everyone's got them. Yeah. But then going and doing something for themselves and getting that huge tick in the box moment for themselves sort of completes those stories. It becomes a weapon rather than an anchor.
Well, I don't know. I'm always like, this is the biggest thing I actually really hate in current society, is all these labels we put on ourselves and each other based on things like we were born with. Be they race, be they sex, be they anything else in between. Like, I'm all about, that daily renewable contract I love back in the selection days. You may earn your beret, but you've got to, you're responsible for it each and every day. And that comes down to a daily renewable contract. And I come from this ignorance in defense whereby, you turn up, whoever turns up that day and puts in their effort, you're assessed on your competence and your character. How you do what you do and the results you get together in doing so. And that's culture each and every day. I keep coming across people, even in the veteran community, I've had some good chats with them, who come into the narrative with their story as entitlement. This is where I have been from. It's like, mate, you have my absolute respect. What do you do with that? Never come to me with entitlement, come to me with responsibility. I have this story. I'm responsible to make sure that those who should be doing their job are held accountable. Yep. I'm responsible to make sure that I demonstrate and lead by example each and every single day. I had a fantastic chat with a bunch of ESOs up in Townsville, and, I don't want to... I'll catch my breath here before I... there are some very large establishments within our veteran community who have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, who have been around for decades, who have the infrastructure and the capabilities to be leading our community right now. but their purpose has gone awry. Their purpose is not solely focused on veterans. It is so token, it's not funny, and I got to see that firsthand. And there are some individuals within those organisations that are fantastic. And you know what? The biggest things that missing in the veteran space is actually surveying veterans to ask them who they're engaging with and what they're doing, because so many of these big cats are just providing their own self-assessments up for grants and everything else in between. But the amount of them that I went to, and you know, straight away they're coming at you with authority. They come at you with like, you know, we are us and you're approaching us, you know, with entitlement. It's like, hey man, we are all veterans here. We are in the middle of a mental health crisis. There is so much more going on as far as like cultural disruptions to our community. How do we work together to solve this, you know? And just, I don't know how we as a community have allowed some of these organisations and establishments to get to these places whereby there's just this segregation and I don't know, colonisation of power and entitlement and, you know, authentic purpose, supporting veterans, doing what needs to be done.
It's because it's filled with individuals, and as humans, like on that level, individuals still don't know how they operate. Like, what is ego? Right? Is ego, like comparison is a form of ego, and people want to get out there and compare their history and say my history is worse than your history. That's ego, mate. That's something that shouldn't even be in the picture. Good. Comparison's horrible.
Press the reset button. We all have a story. We need to be able to get that story out. It's important for us to share it and find those people that you can, but do not enter into any new conversations with that story either as a burden to you or as an entitlement. Carry it forward as your scar, carry it forward as your shield, carry it forward as your limp, but put it to use, you know. When the horde's coming over the hill, you know, we need to put all that beside. We need to bind together, and we need to put our best foot forward in a daily, renewable way. And that's what I really want to, and going to try and do. My focus for this next, you know, leading into Anzac Day, mate, is uniting our community to not be burdened by our past, you know, to acknowledge where we have come from, but to put it to use together. And mate, the attitude is out there. The boys and girls are ready to go. We just need to bring it all together.
In there for the underdog, mate. I love that whole mentality. If there is ego and if there's comparison and if there's all these elements happening in the leadership, how can it ever be a positive thing going backwards to help where the guys are coming from? So what about, let's go back to the self-help. Let's go back to the boys helping the boys. Mate. Let's get back to us grouping together and making change.
Culture from the ground up.
Like, we've got to do it, man.
Culture from the ground up. I'm going to spend as much time as I can engaging with DVR. I've got a couple of meetings coming up the next months, and engaging with some of those key large ESOs to just have conversations like, hey, like, what's your purpose? You know, from what I see on the ground, thank you to all the veterans who get on and complete our ESO survey. You know, this is how many veterans are engaging with you, and this is their current sentiment, and this is how much money you've got from government, and just start providing some of these statistics to DVA and those. Just, we need to bring together the veteran community, and it doesn't need to be anything more than being able to come together, share our voices on all veteran opinions, and be able to provide cut through to government, to ESOs, to whatever is required to action. People need to feel identity to a central community again. So that's going to be the body of work, and hopefully, you know, I'm putting a lot of eggs in one basket with Anzac Day this year. We need to come together as a community and celebrate that spirit that, you know, saw us come together and achieve our individual and collective greatness, and that's going to be the plan over the next couple of months.
And also, team, what is also the plan, COVID, as it starts to disappear, or I guess more or less restrictions are out there. Events, mate, events, you know, and I call them events, but it's just gatherings, you know, key things that are coming up. So stand by, guys. Keep your ear to the ground and keep listening into what we're saying in our posts going out there for Voice of Veteran, because as things come, this is where we need you to make the effort to travel, to get in there and become one of the people.
There's been so many reaching out. You know, we've been traveling around to a few RSLs and clubs and doing this presentation. If there's any veterans or ESOs out there in the community that want to try and put together a Veteran Connect session, that's what we call it. You know, it's literally a sit-down meal, some drinks. Try and not just have it all being bloody alcohol and stuff, but just creating the space. And it's not for the first week. It needs to be like the second week or the third week, bringing people together to connect physically in the veteran community. Because 9 times out of 10, you know, we finish these events, it might be a presentation and then just a chin wag in groups in the end. And it's just someone's like, oh, hey, I didn't know, like, you lived around the block. Yeah, our kids go to school together. I didn't even realize this, you know. And straight away, you've got a battle buddy, and you've got someone who is helping you. And I sit there and I listen to them and go, oh, I've been dealing with this. Oh, no, mate, don't go to this guy. I've got my advocate over here to help you out with. And, we've actually got this and this. Straight away, there's someone out there help solving your problems. And that's, when we're in the unit, when we're in anywhere in the military, mate, the basic fundamentals are we're always in a team.
Yeah.
And why we think we're going to be operating independently, external to that. And it's not about, needing support. It's about being better at everything. It's better when you're in a team. So anyone who wants to just get together and host, mate, we don't need the credit. We don't need any of it. If we can get some money for you to do it, it's all about getting guys and girls together, because that's what we can do on the ground now.
Absolutely. And reach out if you've got some fundraising ideas for us as well. This is all self-funded for Voice of Evennett and the Connect events, for example. And we do have some individuals out there doing some physical things, raising some monies. Exactly. Yeah. So thank you to everybody who's doing those and picking those up. But if you've got other ideas, reach out, let us know. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Turn on the bell. God damn it. So many people don't know about, if you're following us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, there's specific, notifications that you can turn on when specific posts come on. So it's important that you get on there and you hit the bell, and you'll see choices come down. You go, oh, do I want to get a notification for a post, a story, all of their content? You can pick.
Jeez.
Right?
We need a tutorial, Scotty.
Oh, absolutely. So whatever medium you're listening to, whatever platform you love, stick to that, but get in there and click on the notifications, give us a like and a follow, and share the shit out of any content that you like so we can talk to more people.
Do it. voiceofaveteran.org is our central platform. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Likewise. Good to be back. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of a Veteran podcast. We really hope that there were some key takeaways that might help you, be they relatable, be they aspirational. But we're not just here for your entertainment, so please make sure you remember, move on, and action from here.
And that's it, guys. If you've heard something here today that has truly helped you, it's our duty to share that information with as many as we can. Support is about being proactive, and that's taking action to better our own lives as well as the lives as many mates as we can.
We love your support getting these messages out, so please subscribe. Go to our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Voice of a Veteran. Catch you next time.
See ya.